I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Welcome to a Halloween special episode of Dark Natter.
I
think you've perfected it. I think you've got it down.
I really don't know. I'm going to work on this.
Do you think it needs... Is it... The concept is right, but it's just the execution? Or do you think it needs a drastic overhaul?
Drastic overhaul.
So next time you're going to come back with a new look, new sounding laugh.
Yeah.
You're going to research some of the great laughs. That should move on, shouldn't it?
Is that laugh? Or?
It was treading the fine line between mirth and insanity.
Yes.
That's what we want.
Exactly, yeah.
Especially on a day like today.
We specialise in, because what? Well...
We're pretending it's Halloween,
yes.
Although we're recording it in advance, obviously, because you wouldn't record it on the day. That would be winging it. And what if there's one thing we are, it's professionals.
Absolutely.
And who are we, Liam?
Well... You've let the...
guy at the back there. Yeah. You are Liam.
I am Liam. Right. I'm basically just a big horror fan. Serial killer, reformed.
That's right.
Which we established in the first episode. But yeah, just a horror fan and...
enjoying murder vicariously through works of fiction.
Yes.
Unlike your past. Whereas I am John Richter, writer of dark stories. Sometimes horror, sometimes a bit of crime, sometimes a bit of sci-fi. But all rooted in darkness.
Yes, I like that.
We've combined our horrific powers to bring you another episode of Dark Natter. The podcast where we... I was going to launch into my little pre-prepared bit then.
Go for it.
No, go on.
I was going to say, actually, you've got a new book out today.
Oh, yeah, I have, haven't I? Yeah, that's right. That is actually true. I will plug that shamelessly at the end.
Right.
So listen, there's an incentive, as if anyone needed one, to listen to the whole thing, is you get the details of my new book if you stay tuned. I was going to say, hello listeners, welcome to Dark Natter, the podcast where we gorge ourselves on your favourite works of dark fiction. I don't want you to change it. I love that laugh. I want you to just stick with it and do it at random intervals throughout
the show. Concept?
Oh yeah, so it's to celebrate Halloween, All Hallows Eve. We thought we would do a podcast about a very special horror topic, namely Halloween, the popular and decades-spanning horror franchise.
I thought you meant about the public holiday, Halloween, so I've just been researching the history of Halloween.
That's good. Well, and what have you learned?
Not a lot, really, because like most shows, I didn't do any research.
Actually, that's not quite true.
No.
Because for this show, to save you listeners the job of slogging through them, we have watched every single Halloween movie so that we can discuss them in painstakingly excruciating detail.
And some of them will be painful.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. So that is 11 movies, would you believe? Yep. There are 11 Halloween movies.
And what are we going to do when we've discussed them all?
We're going to rank them, mate. We're going to come up with our favourites. And of course, we're going to decide whether the Halloween franchise is worthy of a place in the Hall of Pain. We switched roles there.
We did.
And I think it
went well,
quite refreshing,
yeah.
Actually.
You do a better laugh.
I think you did a better whatever that is that you did.
I don't know what came over me.
So the movies are,
yep.
Just so you know what we're going to be covering in today's episode, which we promise to try and keep under an hour. Oh. Well, we'll try. There's a lot to get through. The original John Carpenter classic, 1978, Halloween.
Yes.
Its sequel, Halloween 2, released in 1981. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which was released in 1982.
That'll be interesting.
I'm not going to bother saying who directed each one because I haven't written it down on my notes, so you can Google it if you care. But Carpenter only did the first one, yeah? And of course, composed the iconic theme music, which you heard to open the show instead of our usual entrance theme.
I thought you were going to let me do it.
What, pick the tune?
No, do the theme tune.
Oh, you mean like sing it?
Yeah.
Have a go. You still can.
It wasn't very good.
It was chilling though. I am quite disturbed. So it had the desired impact. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, 1988. Yep. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, 1989. Then, not always called Halloween 6, sometimes just called Halloween. Tagline, The Curse of Michael Myers, 1995. So he had a little bit of a break, had some time off. Then we were treated to Halloween H2O, which is sort of a crap pun on that it was 20 years after the original.
Yeah, really crap.
Nothing to do with water.
Yeah.
Oh, God, don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
Shit film. Sorry, spoilers. Oh, yeah, spoiler alert. We should probably just drop one in just so we don't forget. There'll be complete, mega riddled with spoilers. This is going to be like a Halloween, like a trick or treat, where instead of tricks or treats, there's only spoilers.
Yeah.
And death.
And that.
And some ropey films. And some good ones.
Yeah.
So that was Halloween H2O, 1998.
Yep.
When slasher movies were enjoying their post-Scream renaissance.
Absolutely.
Followed by a sequel, Halloween Resurrection, in 2002. Then we were treated to the Rob Zombie remake of Halloween. And I haven't written down the year. So
2007, I think.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
Followed by Halloween 2.
I'm going to say 2009, but I'll check.
I'll have it. We'll go with that. We can correct it later.
Yep.
Then another hiatus for Michael Myers, followed by 2018's Halloween, which somewhat confusingly, retcons every previous film aside from the original.
Yes.
So there's some broken continuity.
There's a lot of that going on,
and we'll explain it as we cover each film.
Well, we might as well start with the original then, shall we?
So is the plan to skate over the details of each movie and perhaps just share with the listeners a few interesting facts, plot, other noteworthy things about the film?
Well, in my notes, I've just got talk shit for an hour. So,
excellent. So that's just the usual note then.
No, I think so. Just give people a little overview, pick out some bits we liked, didn't like, and then crack on with the next one.
And then they can form their own opinions when they watch all 11.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I wouldn't recommend doing it back to back, that's for sure.
God, no. I mean, we're both wearing Michael Myers masks right now because we've become so obsessed.
Or are we? Right, original Halloween. What do you think? What happened?
Well, it introduces the central characters of the franchise. First of all, we have Michael Myers, not to be confused with the bloke who does the voice of Shrek.
Yeah.
Or Austin Powers, or Wayne's World. It's kind of weird, isn't it? That we're in a world where that's happened. And I think a few people like me, when they're young and they don't realise, maybe think that Halloween is about Mike Myers killing people. Anyway,
it would make a hell of a SNL sketch, wouldn't it? I'm sure they've probably done it.
Yeah, can't believe they've never made that movie. So Michael Myers is introduced by we have a scene through his eyes.
Yeah.
We don't know it's him at this stage. We just know we're seeing through someone's eyes as he enters a bedroom in which a young girl is brushing her hair, getting ready for a night out or whatever, and he brutally stabs her to death. In a, it's a 1978 movie. It's a bit like when you watch Psycho. The stabbing scene looks really crap and fake. But at the time, it was probably very shocking and gory.
It's all about the suspense, the music,
Correct.
And seeing it through his eyes as well.
It's pretty original.
Participating in the crime, so to speak.
And you hear his breathing from behind
which is all,
it's a theme that runs throughout a lot of the films, this kind of disturbing.
And then after he's killed her, you see him outside, only it's just a small boy in a little clown costume.
Yeah, little kid. So unbeknownst to you, the viewer, the murder of this atrocity has been committed by what looks like, I don't know, like an 8-year-old kid with a clown mask on.
Which was her brother.
Yeah, and that's
Michael
when
Myers.
the mother is screaming and horrified, and that's the opener. Then we cut to what at the time was present day, in effect.
Yeah, yeah.
And Michael Myers has been institutionalised. He's now in his early 20s. And we are introduced to various other characters.
Yeah.
First of all, we have Dr. Loomis, Dr. Samuel Loomis, who is played by Donald Pleasance. Donald Pleasance is an incredibly famous actor. Played Blofeld in one of the Bond films, various other memorable roles. This definitely, certainly his most enduring role, as you'll find out as we get into some of the sequels. So Loomis has spent years
working with Michael Myers,
trying to repair whatever scars exist in his psyche, the psyche of a child that would kill his own sister.
Before essentially realising, no, this is pure evil. We want to keep him locked up.
Yeah, he's a lost cause, and those, his dead eyes, basically. There's nothing behind them.
Yes.
Myers is basically a mute. He doesn't do or say anything, and Loomis comes to the realisation that he's beyond saving. He's just a cold slab of evil.
Yeah.
And we don't actually see Myers yet, do we?
No.
So we don't yet know the almost comedically powerful walking man-mountain that he's going to become by the end of the franchise, or at least some elements of the franchise. So at this stage, he's just a shadowy sort of idea of a fearsome antagonist. And we find out that Myers is being transported for some reason, which requires Loomis to be present. So he and a nurse go to accompany Michael to, I think it's like a court appearance or something, only to find out that he has escaped. And I think he actually is in the process of escaping when they turn up, smashes through the window and steals the car, drives away.
Which actually comes into it later on in like 5 films later or something. But and then he steals a mechanic's uniform.
Which is where he gets the iconic, I know I overuse that word on this podcast, but it really is iconic, set of blue overalls that Myers henceforth will wear throughout the whole series.
And the mask as well.
Doesn't he just stop off and buy it in a shop?
Doesn't he rob that hardware store?
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't just buy it. Excuse me, sir.
I haven't got any change on me.
You got any masks? I need to go and murder some people. Yes, so he acquires the infamous Michael Myers Halloween mask.
Now, that is the backstory. Basically, that's all you kind of need to know at this point, because the rest of the film is him going through his old town, stalking victims, and kind of settling on one, Laurie Strode. So
he returns to Haddonfield, the place of his birth, or certainly where he lived at the time he killed his sister. And initially, it's just a slasher movie. He pops up, he decides to insert himself into the lives of a collection of young, trendy, fun, good-looking, annoyingly happy people. And
when originally it was going to be called something like The Babysitter Murders.
Oh, really?
So it was the idea that he was stalking like babysitters, probably as some sort of revenge for his sister being a crap babysitter. I don't know.
Sense. I think you've done what Loomis could never achieve in years of therapy. You've figured out his motivation.
But so he really got this thing, just going after teens, basically. And
we've used the phrase retcon, retroactive continuity, already on this show, and you'll hear that a lot. But later movies, there's a major piece of retconning, because in the original, Laurie Strode is just a random girl, just one of many potential victims who, over the course of the movie, as he works his way, slitting throats and stabbing teenagers left, right and centre in a blood-crazed frenzy, she just becomes the one that gets away.
Yeah, she's a babysitter. She's babysitting a kid called Tommy Doyle. Again, that comes into it later as well. But she sort of fights back. It introduced the whole final girl trope about the kind of final surviving girl.
And it always being a female character that is the final survivor.
You see it in lots of horror films.
Yeah.
A lot of talk about promiscuous teens getting killed. Is it a film warning against, the premarital sex? Carpenter's denied all of that. He just said that basically she survived because she wasn't doing all those things, because she was, she wasn't distracted by all those things and fighting back.
She's presented as an intelligent character as well. So I guess you're right. You could read it as she's the only one who isn't kind of wantonly just having sex and that's the only thing she's interested in. But you could just read it as she's just presented as a bit more of a bookish, clever, resourceful character than all these nymphomaniacs that seem to exist in horror movie world. So Haddonfield is the setting.
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis, of course, plays Laurie Strode, as she has revisited that role a number of times throughout the series. And as we touched on, Donald Pleasance plays Samuel Loomis, who makes his way to the town to do what he can to try and stop the impending onslaught that he's convinced is about to happen.
Doesn't do that good a job.
No, it's rubbish, it is.
Because a lot of teens get killed, but he does manage to help Laurie stop Michael at the end by shooting him. Shoots him a few times until he falls over kind of a balcony onto the floor. And then we get the ultimate twist at the end that, Michael Myers' body has disappeared. Hence, we get a sequel. Should we talk a bit more about the first film? Or?
One thing I wanted to drop in, the Michael Myers mask is just a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask with the eyes taken out and with the colour bleached off it. It's literally just a Captain Kirk mask.
Probably the best one, because they obviously, later films, the mask, more thought's gone into the design, but I think the original one...
You can just imagine John Carpenter just picking it up, knock off, this'll do, we haven't really got the budget, so I found this, will this be alright?
And it's probably the best one.
And I read that in Halloween 2, which we'll come on to shortly, they couldn't get hold of this same mask, so they had to dig out the same mask, the same one mask, years later to make a sequel. It had been in the possession of Deborah Hill, who, if I understand rightly, she was the producer.
She was his girlfriend at the time.
Oh, okay,
and she actually wrote a lot of the female dialogue, which is why I think it's probably, compared to some of the later films,
a bit more believable.
Where some of the teenage dialogue is just shit.
And what I read about the mask was she just had it in her apartment or whatever, and because she was a heavy smoker, it had gone all kind of yellowed and faded, and therefore when you watch the second film and you see that it looks a bit more weathered, it was because it was the same mask.
But then that would also make sense because it's been, he's been killing people all night, he's been getting shot at.
Brilliant.
So it kind of worked out nicely, didn't it?
So another point about the first movie that, again, it is established and then it runs with it throughout is, you touched on it already, that he's shot about 6 times in the finale and then survives and escapes, is that he is basically an indestructible man. So he's very slow-moving, lumbering, silent. He doesn't speak. He's, in effect, presented as a mute. And he just endlessly pursues. Once he's decided that he's going to get you, then your days are numbered.
And also that was the scary thing about it as well, is that he didn't really have a clear motivation, which was probably scarier because it's just like he just wants to kill people.
Yeah, the whole thing. If you think, it's easy. You forget, don't you? Because we're so. That mask, that character is completely part of the popular culture in which we've both grown up, because we were both born 4 or 5 years after this film came out. If you were seeing that for the first time, you're basically presented with an escaped mental patient who has donned a terrifying mask for no reason and is murdering people for absolutely no reason. It could be you, he could break into you. If you're a babysitter, watch out, because Michael Myers might smash his way through the window and slit your throat. So you could see why it was a genuinely terrifying film.
Another thing they said about the original one is they wanted, so like the Myers house after he committed the murder when he was a child, the idea that every sort of suburb has got this like haunted house where you're sort of, you don't want to go there, that's where loads of people were butchered. And I just wanted to know if you had anything like that where you grew up. Because we did. Where I grew up, there was a house sort of up the top of this hill. And I'm sure it was just normal people lived there. But when we used to get the bus to school, we used to see it. It did look very creepy. I'll show it to you next time we go back there. And we were like, oh, that you don't want to go there. That's like...
I'm well jealous. No, there was a rumour that a particular house somewhere in Standish, where I'm from, near Wigan, the husband had killed his wife in there, which sounds pretty bullshit, probably not actually true. Probably every town has that same thing. But it was a lot less specific. Like, I don't remember being shown which house it was.
But of course now, because I'm from Gloucester, we do actually have 25 Cromwell Street, where Fred West and Rose West committed all these murders and buried the bodies. However, the house had been just completely destroyed, knocked over.
I'm always interested in that. So in this series of movies, there's this Michael Myers' old house is in effect what attracts him back, or one of the things that attracts him back to Haddonfield, and a lot of the action often seems to centre around, he's holed himself up in the house again. Whereas in real life, if such a horrible thing happens, do the house, would anyone ever want to live there again? Do they just always get knocked down?
Kind, like you said, kind of becomes a plot point. But yeah, I think they'd probably just destroy it, depending on the...
Yeah, someone must assess that. Like, how bad were the crimes? It was 2 murders, but they were only,
Yeah, and, unlike that Cromwell Street place, they weren't buried in the
backyard and in the basement. Blimey. So I think we've covered all of the staples there of the series. We don't need to go too much into the detail of exactly what happens.
So first one, ace film, great music, brilliant baddie.
Brilliant baddie. Not a lot more to say about it other than it's a must-see for any horror aficionado.
Absolutely. John Carpenter, obviously.
Correct. What a guy. John, I'm sure you're listening, John. So just to say that we salute you. I'm sure you'll be getting your own Dark Natter episode at some point.
Yeah. You might even get into the Hall of Pain one day.
Well, steady on. Hey, it's a pretty elite club. Let's not offer too much.
It's not easy.
Halloween 2.
Halloween 2. I'll go straight away and say I didn't actually like it that much.
I agree with you. It was weirdly a continuation directly after the events of the first film. There's no time delay.
So as I say, Myers falls off this balcony when they finally get off their arse and look over. He's just gone, and then it starts. Halloween 2 is basically,
and it shows the ending of the first film again, like a big long chunk of it, which is really strange, and actually reminds me of something we didn't mention, which is that you never ever see. Well, you never properly see Myers' face unmasked. No. So although in some of the films you do see him without his mask on, you'll get a very blurred shot or an obscured camera behind his head. In the first film, she actually pulls the mask off him. And you do see his face.
Quite a good shot of it, don't
correct. He's covering his eyes, isn't he? Because I think she's poked him in the eye with a coat hanger by that point. But that's pretty much it. Interestingly, the first film is where you get the
best look
glimpse of his face. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So Halloween 2. So Laurie's taken to local hospital. Myers has escaped and is still kind of terrorising the community, just trying to get away from the police. And then he finds out that Laurie is in the hospital, and he makes his way to the hospital to try and finish the job, essentially.
Now, one thing I wanted to touch on, and now feels like a good time, is as I ploughed through all these films, I noticed, particularly in the earlier ones, a number of parallels between Halloween and the Terminator movies. And I think it was this film.
Well, I wasn't expecting this.
So, bear with me on this. So, in this film, she is in a hospital. It should be a place of safety. She's been told not to worry. It's over now. Your ordeal is over. You're going to be okay. Just calm down. Stop panicking. There's lots of guards and security staff and kindly nurses and all those kind of things. And later in the movie, of course, Myers appears in the hospital and starts killing everyone. And anyone who, it seems like everyone Laurie Strode turns to that looks like some sort of authority figure who can potentially protect her is destined to have their guts stabbed in at some point soon thereafter. So it's that idea of a safe place being turned into a killing ground for a kind of unstoppable baddie, like in the original Terminator with a police station.
Yeah, and also the suburbs themselves, the safe place, the safety of the suburbs.
Yeah.
Suddenly. But you're right, actually,
And then you add to that you've got this slow-moving, ponderous big, strong, powerful, unstoppable killing machine, like the Terminator. Certainly Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, with that lumbering, slow-paced kind of big man thing going on. So it just, I wondered whether the original Terminator movie, which doesn't come out till a few years later, drew some of its inspiration from the Halloween movies.
Maybe, yeah. It would make sense.
We'll get Cameron on the phone.
Why not?
We'll find out.
Now, the second film, they do retcon something quite big. We find out that actually Laurie is Michael Myers' sister.
Yes.
So now you're kind of presented with a reason why he's targeted Laurie.
Yeah.
And
it rings a bit hollow, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it feels
does,
a bit cheap. It didn't, as we touched on, it didn't need that explanation. It didn't need a justification. That was in a way more terrifying, that he was just for no reason killing these people. And it also, if his goal was to kill her, why did he sort of faff about killing all her mates first?
Exactly,
it just makes little sense.
You could understand him killing people who got in his way, or if he needed something like the mechanic, whatever. But yeah, it's just being a dick.
Yeah, well, maybe he's just a prankster, like that old scamp, old Michael.
The film ends with Dr. Loomis actually kind of sacrificing himself. It's in the hospital, obviously. Laurie is weak because she's been operated on. Presumably she's been sort of drugged up. But Laurie gets out. Michael Myers, big explosion. Presumably, looks like Michael Myers is actually dead this time, as is Dr. Loomis.
Yeah, it felt like a pair of whether the second one lived up to the first. I mean, it didn't. Let's be clear.
I just thought it was more of the same. The retconning was a bit, like I said, kind of rung a little bit hollow. Better kills. There was a good one with the nurse where he keeps popping her head into that scalding hot.
Oh, he turns the heat up on that like therapy bath or whatever it is.
Definitely more creative kills, I think, in the second one.
Because the first one, when you watch it, it's strange what constitutes aging in a film. It definitely feels very dated, and certainly the actual kills look really, really tame in the first one.
Definitely,
So I agree with you. I appreciated it when they start to get a bit more creative and, dare I say, just a bit more gory and satisfying. But then there's a fine line to be trod there, isn't there? Because you don't want to go too silly, as it maybe does in later.
I've also got in my notes about how in Halloween 2 I noticed that cars not starting is a lot like mobile phones not working in today's horror films. Because you obviously... The obvious way to escape him would just be get into a car and just drive off. He can drive, but but you could just drive anywhere and presumably he wouldn't be able to find you.
So conveniently, to get around that, those films just always featured unreliable cars, as modern horror films always feature. Oh, no signal, no battery,
dead. Yeah.
Which is funny. That's
I've also got my notes. Loomis is a prick.
I feel like I love him a lot. He was
I love him.
My favourite thing in the whole series.
He just talks over everyone. He's just
like me. Sounds like me.
Yeah, he's just a bit of a prick, but I do love him.
His accent's all over the place in it as well. Like Pleasance is trying to do I think he started off trying to do an American accent, and then just kind of binned it off after a couple of films.
Yeah, very sort of theatrical guy, isn't he? And he is great in the films.
Honestly, I think that as we get into some of the later ones, the only thing that was helping me get through them was knowing that he was going to come back. And it's weird because normally the character that recurs in movies is the action hero.
Yeah.
Laurie Strode, this will be her last one for a while. She's not in the next batch of sequels. But weirdly,
but
Samuel Loomis is the recurring, almost like the lead in a strange way.
Sort of the protagonist. Well, the kind of co-protagonist.
He's always a support, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's a strange one.
Yeah. But anyway, Halloween 2, I'm not a huge fan of it. I think they could have done without it, but yeah.
Well, evidently, other people thought that too, because when they made Halloween 3, they went absolutely batshit friggin' crazy.
And Halloween 3 is absolutely nuts.
Oh
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
I can't even... What's that phrase that people say? I can't even. You go, because I can't begin to describe this bonkers.
So basically, no Michael Myers in it at all. The only shot you see of Myers is somebody watching. I think it's a trailer for the Halloween movie. So in Halloween 3, Halloween 1 and 2 are movies. So Michael Myers isn't.
But it's not even a slasher movie.
It's not a slasher movie.
It's a film about an evil toy maker who is trying to reenact some sort of ancient druidic ritual that causes children to die if they wear his masks.
Which are all embedded with the power of Stonehenge. Which they've nicked.
While assisted by an army of robotic clockwork men that are doing his bidding and killing anyone who gets too close to the truth.
It is bonkers.
I mean, again, I'm going to stick with this Terminator inspiration theme, theory, because we've got robot men that are kind of unstoppable robotic strength, superhuman strength.
Yeah, because at first they even make a point of it that one of the robots kills the guy who presumably did get too close to the truth, and they've got this sort of superhuman strength, but they just look like normal blokes, and obviously you don't find out until later that they're these kind of androids.
It's got a mad soundtrack. It's got a brilliant synth wave kind of. I've been listening to it in the background while I'm writing and whatever. But also, it's got that song. The toy maker's evil toy emporium is called the Silver Shamrock, which sounds more like a pub, but it's not. And it has a jingle that is, and so. It would appear that everyone in this, whatever state it's in, this toy shop is a really big deal because it seems to get its commercial gets aired approximately every 5 minutes.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Every time anyone's watching the TV, it's playing this Silver Shamrock advert. Anytime anyone sticks the radio on. And of course, it's encouraging people to tune in on Halloween because the tuning in is part of the process that activates the masks.
Which, if you're wearing the masks, when this broadcast goes live, it basically kills you.
Well, it makes insects come out of your orifices. It's honestly, it's
just children as well.
Only happens to children. So he's trying to use this catchy advertising jingle, which I won't even try to impersonate. We'll include
Happy Halloween.
Oh my God, it's happening again. It's quite very addictive,
catchy,
isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Happy Halloween.
And at first it's counting down, isn't it? It's like 8 more days to
Halloween. Yes, 8 more days to Halloween. So if that sounded like an incoherent, garbled mess, that's because this film is. But that doesn't mean that it's not good.
It's great.
Because it's ace.
It's just very camp, very over the top.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. Most of my notes are just laughing emojis.
Yeah.
Because of how crackers this film really was.
It's definitely worth a watch. It got absolutely panned when it came out, but it's developed a bit of a cult following now, hasn't it? And you can see why. If you watch it, you'll totally understand why. Almost killed the franchise, apparently.
So my understanding is the reason this is part under the Halloween name is because Carpenter, as a producer, had this idea that they could use the Halloween sort of overarching brand to encompass lots and lots of very different stories, but all centered around, bad shit happening on Halloween.
So like an anthology, which I think is way ahead of its time as well, because you look at now with these kind of shared universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You could have had this Halloween cinematic universe where it all kind of ties into each other. There's all like loose links.
We could have had Michael Myers fighting against robots and creepy kids.
But do you know what I mean? But I think it was ahead of its time, you know. But that was the problem. The fact they didn't have Michael Myers in, basically, people were expecting that, and then they got this batshit crazy film.
Came out of the cinema probably saying, "What the hell just happened to me?"
Also, American Horror Story, things like that. Every season is like a same sort of cast usually, but it's a different sort of theme. I think it was ahead of its time.
So, sadly, in many ways, after the flop of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, Halloween 4 brings back Michael Myers. Yeah. And we return to a story centred around another one of his killing sprees.
Yeah.
On the plus side, because you get to a point where I almost feel like as soon as you're into number 4 of anything, you almost automatically just assume it's going to be rubbish.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be running out of ideas.
Yeah.
Just trying to think of an example of a 4th film that's any good in anything ever. I'm sure there is one. Please write.
Well, you think of like Nightmare on Elm Street, and they got
they get silly.
Yeah,
but
still good though.
I think there are some elements of Halloween 4 that were kind of okay. Donald Pleasance is in it.
Yeah.
I was pleased to see his return.
Let's just remind them. So basically, Pleasance and Myers survive the big explosion
at the end of Halloween 2.
And Myers obviously wakes up from his slumber and goes on another killing spree. This time, who's he after?
There's a bit where there's some randoms getting shown around the facility that he's currently occupying, and someone says, Jesus. And then the security guard goes, Jesus ain't got nothing to do with this place.
Yeah, that was great.
I thought that was a good line. So yeah, they haven't learned yet that you shouldn't ever move him as soon as you try and transport him from one place to another.
He's been there for years.
Not cause any trouble.
Just keep him there.
At one point, I've written down that he pushes his thumb through someone's forehead.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's early doors. That's an interesting kill.
Again, more creative. Back to, this is, again, very violent. Back to being a proper slasher movie. And he's actually, this time, after his niece.
Yeah, so
Laurie's had a kid.
And then
Jamie.
And then died.
And then died.
She's absent. I think
she is dead.
I think it's confirmed that she's no longer alive. So yeah, Laurie Strode's passed away. Her daughter, who's, I don't know, about 6 or 7 or whatever she is, Jamie. Cute kid, good actress, does a good job.
And got some sort of weird kind of psychic link almost.
No,
well,
I don't think that's introduced until the next film.
That's not apparent just yet, but...
Before we get to that point, first of all, we do see Michael Myers driving a car, which I was surprised about until I remembered that he actually does nick one in the original film. Good point. There's a kind of a siege storyline where once it becomes known that Myers has escaped and he's making his way back to Haddonfield once again, you get a load of sort of stereotype rednecks.
Was that 4, was it?
Vigilantes, and they want to take him out. They're like, he's not going to come back to this town, we'll get him. And rightly, the sheriff is not keen on this posse forming to lynch someone. Whereas Loomis is all for it. He's like, these might be the best.
It's the only way we've got.
And everyone listens to him. This old crackpot who has got no police. He's walking around with a gun most of the time.
And Loomis is on top form in this one, isn't he?
He becomes this like crazy old man. But I love him. Every time he's on camera, it's like the highlight. I wrote down that Myers very slowly chasing a little kid around is a bit shit, like Home Alone, but gorier. And at one point, there's a scene where I think he bursts through a wall in an attempt to get to little Jamie. And the mask they've used, because evidently they founded some sort of mass production factory, is blonde. There's just this glaring continuity error in it. Like, what is that about?
Surely, yeah.
Massive error. And then there's a daft ending.
Well.
Or maybe a good ending.
Now.
An interesting ending. An unexpected ending.
So... I'm getting them all confused now. We've watched so many. So what happens to Myers at the end of this one?
He gets blasted to smithereens by about 1 billion policemen.
And falls into that big hole.
Literally shot in the face at point blank range with shotguns.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he's a bit like a boss in a video game. You shoot him in the face, but all it does is like knock a bit of his energy off instead of splattering his skull open. So no visible bullet wounds, no blood, but he still is blasted backwards, falls into like an open grave.
Which basically the earth kind of swallows him up almost, doesn't it? I think that it sort of collapses almost.
And then this, that's it. He's a write-off. He's dead. Finally, we're rid of this accursed monster.
But then Jamie, who is obviously related to Michael Myers in this, since we retconned it in Halloween 2, well, at the end, you see her, she's back at home. Her, I'm not sure what relation is to her. Is it foster parent? Or
let's go with that. Or auntie.
Okay. Anyway,
guardian. Her female guardian.
Is running a bath for her. Then we see the old, from the original Halloween, through the killer's eyes, in a house, knife, walking up the stairs. Oh, scissors, I think it is, actually. And then the mother turns, and then, stabbed. Who was it? Loomis comes up the stairs.
He does his reaction is amazing. No! He's really going for it.
Because you see that it's little Jamie wearing the little clown costume.
Same
with
as
a bloodied,
Michael. So she's been in some way either so traumatised by her experiences, or is it some sort of almost spiritual curse that's been passed to its next victim?
And Loomis goes to shoot her, but the sheriff stops him from doing it because Loomis is just freaking out. Now, the reason I quite like this ending, as silly as it is that I remember seeing this film when I was quite young, and I remember at the time it always stuck with me thinking actually that was quite a good twist, because now you've got this potential new generation.
It could be anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Watching it now, yeah, it's a bit shit.
Again, it's almost like...
But I liked it when I saw it, if you know what I mean.
The pattern that seems to emerge with the Halloween movies is they start in a kind of slow-paced, dread-building, quite interesting way. You get some cool stuff with, Myers has escaped or everyone's scared. The endings are usually, if nothing else, eventful. But the middle of the movie, where he's just doing his slow-paced murdering of annoying nymphomaniacal teenagers, it's just really boring and dull and drags on. And you think, why is he even bothering to, you're better than this, Michael. You don't need to slum it with these people. Just leave them to it and go and you've got bigger fish to fry.
So that brings us then to Halloween 5.
Pleasance is back again.
Little Jamie is back. Now... She didn't kill her guardian.
She just attacked her.
She attacked her. The guardian survived. So traumatised by this, she's in a hospital, like an institution.
She's now also become unable to speak.
She's mute.
She's mute, just like Myers.
But she's not evil. She's a good egg.
So everyone is nice to poor Jamie and has forgiven her for this attack on her mum.
Yeah.
Except for Loomis, who spends most of the film just hassling her and bullying her.
Because
he's convinced she psychically knows where Michael Myers is.
And she kind of does. Whenever Michael... we should also explain that, Myers survived this...
he got out of being shot 1,000 times.
They threw dynamite down into the ground. But by the time it blew up, he'd already sort of washed up into this... stream, and he gets
some kindly old fella takes pity on him and nurses him back to health, who he then immediately kills.
But he tries to kill the old fella, hasn't got the strength to, faints, but the old fella still
helps him out.
I don't get that. I wonder whether the old fella's part of this cult of Thorn, which is hinted at in this film, because Christ, it's getting convoluted now.
It really is. But you're right, it is interesting that they introduce an idea in this movie that is then completely not paid off, and then it is revisited in Halloween 6. So it is almost like
years later.
They were planning this.
They were planning
as if it was some big visionary masterpiece, which I gotta tell you, it ain't.
But basically, he's back. He's after Jamie again. Kills a load of kids. There's an amazing greaser guy in it called Mikey.
The Fonz.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Don't you touch my car.
And Michael Myers scratches his car and then kills him.
Kills him with the gardening tool that he's just
incredible.
Scratching his car with.
And there's also a comedy double act. This police double act,
and it does those sound effects. Yeah, when every time they turn up, it's
which is so out of
tonally,
place,
it's all over the place. And brilliant. So, Loomis, right, by this point, he's got to have been completely discredited as a doctor, because all we've seen him do is fail to gain any insight into the mind of Myers, fail to stop Myers, and harass a poor 8-year-old kid. But somehow, he ends up in a position where he's rigged up this metal chain trap, a net,
to trap,
and he uses the little girl as bait to entice Myers into his trap. Drops the trap, and then Pleasance must have been 60 odd by this point. Absolutely. He's clobbering Myers with a piece of wood, battering him to a pulp. I loved it. It's great. That ending was absolutely.
There's also
brilliant.
Actually genuinely as well. Before then, there's a bit where he's chasing. Jamie almost gets through to him emotionally, goes to wipe away a tear or something ridiculous like that, and then Michael Myers freaks out, chases her through the house. But there's a really good bit in the laundry chute. I don't know if you remember that, when he's trying to get her. That was genuinely, actually, I thought, quite a tense.
Yeah, she's trapped in the bottom of a laundry.
And he's looking up, trying to get her. I thought that was actually genuinely quite a good bit.
And your point about the cult of Thorn, this movie ends ludicrously. There's
a man in black.
Well, sorry. So at a point, there's a man in black with a strange tattoo on his wrist.
You sort of see him periodically throughout the film.
Just knocking about.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't appear again.
No.
And then at the end of the movie, when Myers has been incarcerated once again, the sheriff, it's like the 12th sheriff by this time of Haddonfield, because they keep dying and all the daughters keep dying. And he's like, oh, don't worry, we've got him in a maximum security prison this time. And then within seconds of him saying that, it blows up and Myers escapes again.
So the man in black presumably
has busted him out of there.
Jamie goes in. She's on her own for some reason. Yeah, and Myers is gone again.
So, leading us on to Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, sometimes known as Halloween 6.
Now, what was the gap between these two films?
Well, the previous film was 1989.
Yeah.
This film is 1995. So just to put a bit of context, right, the previous film, Halloween 5, came out the same year as Batman.
Yeah.
This film, we're now into the territory of, like, has Jurassic Park's been out by now? Proper, what you think of as modern blockbusters.
Yeah.
And yet they were still churning out Halloween sequels.
But you watch
feel very old-fashioned.
You watch the beginning of this, though, and it does feel like it's compared to others, it's from a different era. It does, the way it's shot, just everything about it, it's more industrial at the beginning, particularly.
Yeah.
It does feel like it's from a different era compared to the others.
Yeah, it's more kind of grimy, gritty, unpleasant.
A bit like, it reminds me a bit of Alien 3, actually.
Yeah.
Sort of the difference between that and maybe the old ones. It's got that sort of industrial feel about it.
Everything's rust and caked in old blood.
Or at least it is at first, and then it just becomes a big pile of shit.
You didn't like it then?
It was okay. I still actually had some quite good ideas, but it was there's two versions of it. It went through this really troubled production cycle, which I think is why it took so long for it to actually come out. There was a legal battle, I think, over...
And am I understanding correctly that in terms of the plot, it opens with this woman being dragged along on a gurney in some sort of cult, burning torches on the walls kind of setting. There's a birth scene, and the baby is given to that black-clad man with a tattoo that we saw. And at this point, I was like, "What's this baby? What's going on here?" And I think later on, it is established that is Jamie's daughter.
So Jamie is the girl. Yeah, she's on the gurney. So it's Jamie's daughter.
Insinuated that it's Myers' daughter?
It's Myers' daughter. So basically they're trying to spawn this new kind of evil...
So they have...
But there's two different versions, you see, and from a narrative perspective, they're quite different.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So well, I guess if we'll go with the one that is got my facts right, the sort of the standard release,
TV,
the feature release that you get on, where did I watch it? On Amazon Prime, I think. In effect, the cult has engineered the impregnation of Jamie, who's probably barely old enough, by Michael Myers himself.
Yeah.
But he's not shown any desire to
I don't know
have sex with anyone
I don't know
in any of the movies. Why would he do that?
Don't know.
Weird. Really
it's
weird.
Just bizarre, yeah.
And then Paul Rudd is in it.
Paul Rudd. And Paul Rudd is...
from Friends.
Is little Tommy Doyle.
Yes!
From the original film. So the kid that Laurie Strode was babysitting is convinced now that there's some sort of... He actually cottons onto the fact that Michael Myers is kind of being backed, I guess, by this cult of Thorn.
Yeah.
Which you see this little symbol on Myers. I think you see it in Halloween 5, don't you? The Thorn symbol.
Yeah, that was the thing on the guy's wrist.
But don't you see it on Myers as well?
Pass.
I think you do.
So you've got this idea that little Tommy Strode is now a young grown Tommy Doyle. Sorry, I apologise. Well, there is a Strode in this movie.
Yeah.
It's Cara Strode.
Yeah.
And I was getting pretty confused by this point. She's like a distant relative of...
And they've moved into their old house because her arsehole dad
is a cheapskate and he knew that it was the murder house.
He's a real prick as well.
And the others didn't know, so they just went along with it. Oh, it's getting, But
this film, they basically try to explain everything about Michael Myers. So it wasn't good enough that he was just going after his sister. It's explained how Michael Myers learned to drive, because it was the doctor who taught him, the cult leader, basically, who was, it transpires, the doctor from his old institution, Dr. Wynn, who actually I think appears in the first film. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, so he was the one who taught him how to drive. You realise how it is that Michael's got this superhuman strength and resilience because it's part of the cult. The cult of Thorn, basically, they perform this ritual and he's got to kill all his family members. Really convoluted shit. But it basically tries to just explain everything.
And this was also, we got Samuel Loomis, once again, appears in this movie. This was actually released in the final year of Donald Pleasance's life.
Oh, really?
In 1995. Pleasance is amazing. If you read about him, he spent some time in like a prisoner of war camp during the Second World War. The guy is awesome. It kind of makes me want to go and watch more stuff with him.
Definitely,
He's a very, very charismatic fellow.
But he's become a sort of recluse now, hasn't he? And
he's retired. He's finally got the message that he's a shit doctor.
But Dr. Wynn tries to bring him back, and I think it must be the producer's cut, he basically becomes the new cult leader, Dr. Loomis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So in the alternate version, it's like a bad ending, and Loomis is the big bad?
He doesn't choose to be. Dr. Wynn, I can't even remember, sacrifices himself or something to pass on the cult leadership to Dr. Loomis. It's just fucking convoluted. It's balls.
The big finale, or at least of the version that I watched, is after... how many movies we have? 5 movies about Michael Myers, the unstoppable psychopath, the stone cold killer. He can survive a hail of bullets from an entire crack team of, police hitmen. He is beaten up and killed by Paul Rudd, isn't he? And that's the end of Michael Myers.
Apparently, the curse of Michael Myers was a joke as well. Somebody made a joke about the curse of the Michael Myers because this film had such a troubled production, and they liked it and went with it.
Because it's another tagline, similar to Season of the Witch, which bears absolutely no relation to the movie that it depicts. It's not about a curse. It's weird. Very weird movie. In some ways worth watching just because of how bizarre it is tonally. But
it's also, I think, worth watching the producer's cut as well, because
which I haven't seen.
Also, there's a nice little thing. Kara is taken by the cult and she's locked in room 237, which is a little shining to the film, because I think the book's 217, wasn't it? But the film was 237.
Oh, I completely missed that. I think I was probably glazing over into sort of semi-stupor by this point, because it
was pretty shit.
It's not a great film. Now,
speaking of pretty shit...
Well, I was going to say, at that point, you would think, let's give this poor, worn-out franchise a bit of a rest. But nope, Scream came out, revitalised the slasher genre, and so 3 years later, we get Halloween H2O, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a weird water pun that doesn't even make any sense. And oh my god, I hated this film with a passion. Because if there's one thing, even in the lowest points of Halloween 2 and 6, and it's getting pretty dull, you've got this character, this big, terrifying, slow-moving, unstoppable Michael Myers, and you've got his relationship with Samuel Loomis, that kind of tragic, he feels responsible because his patient is committing all these atrocities and he can't get through to him and stop it. Halloween H2O, you've got no Loomis, because obviously sadly Donald Pleasance had passed away, but what you have got is a version of Michael Myers that just looks like a scrawny, short, kind of weedy killer. A terrible version of The Mask where you can see his eyes that just takes away any of that sinister menace and just makes him look like a kind of, I don't know, googly-eyed kind of oddball. And it's just like a Scream wannabe.
And so I can kind of understand why they would want to capitalise on Scream, because it did really revitalise the slasher genre, but it's just crap.
It's just rubbish.
Really shit.
Like, you've still got things like, and I don't mean to overdo this point about him being physically different, but I just felt he's still picking people up with like one hand at the end of a knife, but he's like 3 inches shorter than him and built like me. He's meant to be a big, scary presence, not a weedy little coward.
And it retcons it again, doesn't it? Because Laurie Strode is back teaching at a school.
Yes. We should mention that it does feature the return. You would think a film that featured the return of Jamie Lee Curtis, who I think is a really good actress, to the franchise but it's not.
I do remember it being quite a big deal, because I went to the cinema to see this. Now, it could have just been because I was finally old enough to go and see these kind of films at the cinema, so maybe it was a bigger deal in my head, but I kind of remember it being like quite a big...
It's got a young, what's his name, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Jason, I can never remember his name.
And that guy...
Josh Hartnett.
Yeah,
they're both in it, young'uns. So it does feel like a bit of an all-star cast, but...
But yeah, Laurie Strode, and she defeats him, but oh no, it's not him.
Well, the end of this movie concludes with she's had enough. She's had it up to here. Laurie Strode. She's not going to take it anymore. She's going to fight back. She's been hiding for 20 years, and Michael Myers has finally located her to finish the job that he started in the first 2 movies. So this movie acts in effect as a direct sequel to Halloween 2, and it bins off all the others that we've discussed, including Halloween 3. So the finale is they're in a vehicle, it's smashing down a mountainside, and somehow she's thrown from the vehicle and Myers is pinned against a tree. And there's this, what I think is meant to be this fleeting moment of almost touching sibling affection, where she's kind of reaching for him and he reaches out his hand. And then she chops his head off with an axe. Yeah. And whoa, that's how many films have we seen Myers avoid death? And now he's finally been decapitated, and that is your lot. Yeah. And you kind of think, well, it's ending on a really sour note with such a crap film, but at least he's finally been put to rest, and we can.
At least we got some closure.
Got some closure.
Oh yeah, but
until
Christ.
It's a peek behind the curtain. We've literally just watched this one immediately before recording because it was very difficult. You couldn't even get this one on. I couldn't find it on Amazon Prime. I couldn't.
I found it on Chili, but I didn't. I waited.
Chilean.
No, Chile. There's like a.
I thought you meant you'd had to go to like a South American website.
No, I went to Chile
to buy a copy with subtitles. So Halloween Resurrection.
Which again feels very sort of 90s, doesn't it? I don't think it came out in the 90s.
I think it was early noughties,
but it feels, you know what I mean, though? It's got that sort of post-Scream kind of...
And it's trying to do something a bit meta. So H2O had this really pathetic reference to Scream by people were watching Scream in it. And all that made me think was, you wish this film was a patch on the excellent Scream movie. Anyway... scary movie. You can't do a parody of a film that's already a parody.
Yeah.
But I'll leave that alone. In this movie, it's trying to do like a reality TV gimmick. So the idea is that Busta Rhymes is a reality TV host who has persuaded a gang of wannabe young teens, again, young people, to appear in an internet...
Really annoying young teens.
Really possibly the worst batch of them all. Maybe. God, they're so irritating. There's always a kind of bookish, sensible one that's the main lead. There's then a complete sex-crazed sort of, pervert female friend. And then there's usually a kind of nerdy kind of guy or a creepy perv guy, or sometimes that's the same one.
Yeah, and sort of jock.
And then there's like a good guy, like a good wholesome guy, and then they all die except for the aforementioned bookish heroine, and then we move on.
So basically, they go into Mike Myers' old house to film this reality TV show.
You mean Michael Myers? They go into Wayne's basement.
Oh yeah, but at the beginning, by the way, Michael Myers. It transpires it wasn't him who was beheaded. It was.
He set it up and he put his overalls and mask on a different person who
and he also crushed his...
And he crushed his larynx so that he couldn't tell her to stop. So why did he reach for her then, tenderly, if it was a different bloke?
Well, because he was like,
please help, don't chop my head off, please.
I mean, it makes sense.
But
then... They undo all of that anyway because Michael Myers comes back to get Jamie Lee Curtis, who's in institutionalized.
Before we even get to Busta Rhymes,
big bit, isn't it?
The opening of the film is Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, is now institutionalized because she's so distraught at having chopped off an innocent man's head. And Myers turns up at the facility and kills her.
Only she's been preparing for him to come there because she hasn't been taking her medication.
In like a Linda Hamilton Terminator 2 way, more Terminator parallels. One of the movies has even got a dog called Max in it. Just saying.
There you go.
Just saying.
And then she actually looks like she's defeated him, but she goes to take his mask off to ensure she doesn't behead the wrong person again.
Not again, Laurie.
And then he grabs her, pulls her over the side of the building, stabs her, throws her off. She's dead. He's alive. Hands over his knife to...
just a random patient
whom I thought would be the new killer.
So he gives his knife to this other guy as if handing over the rake. I've done my
time.
I've finally put a shift in. I finally killed off Laurie. And then that isn't revisited.
No.
So Jamie Lee Curtis does not come back.
No.
She doesn't come back. Michael Myers just goes on to feature in the rest of the film, or is it this other patient? We are never. It's never made clear. Just it's almost like they had an hour's worth of a movie and they realised it wasn't long enough, so they decided to graft on like an opening. And then they found this other opening that some completely different set of filmmakers and scriptwriters had made and just sewed them together and thought, we'll get away with it.
Very disparate.
So Jamie Lee Curtis appears on the cover of the DVD that I ended up having to buy to get hold of this film. And she's depicted in her short-haired guise from Halloween H2O. In this movie, she only appears as a long scraggly-haired, incarcerated, mentally ill woman. It's just a hodgepodge, shall we say.
And anyway, so they do this reality TV show in his house. He picks them all off. But, oh no, Busta Rhymes is there, thankfully, to kung fu kick him over the edge and save the day. And then
he literally twice Busta Rhymes beats up Michael Myers.
And I'm having it that he just had it in his contract, like, no way am I going to lose to him.
I think you can imagine the negotiation. I'll be in your movie, but only if I can kung fu kick Michael Myers' head in. Now,
the idea of this reality TV show, it was very of its time, I think. And I don't think it's a bad idea necessarily, but it's still not a very good film, is it?
No, I mean, he does say at the end, trick or treat, motherfucker. Yeah. But even that doesn't save it from the depths.
Christ, are you bored yet? Because by this point, Halloween H2O Resurrection, I think, just don't do anything else with it.
Yeah, this is, to me, at that point, it is a completely dead franchise. And if I'd have been watching them in the chronological order that we've gone through them, I don't know if I could have brought myself to watch another Halloween movie. However, it's interesting because we haven't discussed this before.
We've never discussed it.
I'm going to go straight in there. Rob Zombie's Halloween remake is good. I enjoyed it, and I reckon it's worth a watch.
I agree to an extent. Yeah,
it gives Myers a very lengthy opening half an hour of backstory,
which I do have some problems with.
We get a very, in my opinion, very charismatic young, glassy-eyed, creepy
the kid. I think is great in it.
Brilliant,
yeah, really good in it.
We get Samuel. It's a remake, so we get a new Samuel Loomis, which is Malcolm McDowell, who I have slagged off in this podcast in the past, and I think he does a great job.
I think he was really good in it. Yeah,
really good. Like he's got that that same hammy British accent. Michael.
He plays it like Donald Pleasence.
Yeah, you get this great sense of this. He really means well, and he's desperately trying to get through to this poor little boy who, yes, he's committed these atrocities, which Rob Zombie ramps up massively. So it's no longer just the murder of his sister; he's murdered his entire family. But Loomis
bar his mum and his baby sister.
He murders his sister and
the abusive stepfather.
Yeah. Oh, are those the only two people he kills? Oh, and he smashes a bully to bits, doesn't he, with a big branch. And Loomis is really trying to get through to him, and you see loads of these scenes of them together in the the facility in which he's now incarcerated. But the child is growing more and more introverted and barely speaks. He started to insist on wearing masks like he did on the infamous night. And what this does introduce in a new element is that the Michael Myers mask this time was actually present on the night of the murders that he committed as a child. It was, I think his sister has a boyfriend round who is wearing the creepy mask. So there is another person that's murdered. It's the boyfriend carks it as well, and he puts the mask on
after they had sex, and then he sort of touches her leg up, which is a bit
it's almost.
But he also, even though I think they make him sort of semi-sympathetic.
Yeah,
because he is being bullied, his abusive stepfather, a bit of a shit home life. I think his mum's a stripper, which he gets kind of bullied about at school. But he is also like harming animals and killing lots of animals and things. So he kind of is a bit of a psychopath.
It gives you this quite interesting, pretty three-dimensional view of this troubled kid. And you can, to me, I know you could argue that, we don't need to give everything a backstory and explanation. And I know Rob Zombie, hit and miss for me. His movies, every character in Rob Zombie films is always a foul-mouthed, disgusting pervert.
Which we do see in this as well.
And it gets to a silly extent. But I think to explain why Myers would end up the way he does by just surrounding him with all this kind of horrible family situation, to me, it kind of rang true. And again, partly because of the kid's excellent performance.
Yeah, but do you think it's humanising him and making him a sympathetic character, though? Like we said earlier about him not having any kind of motive to kill, is that a good thing or not?
When you finally are done with the flashback scene or sequence and it cuts to today and you see Myers, he's been in the cell for however long it's meant to be, 15 years. He hasn't spoken to anyone for years. Loomis has retired, grudgingly given up on... Yeah. He actually kills someone else, doesn't he, as the child attacks a nurse.
That's right, yeah.
In the hospital. So
Which leads to his mum killing herself.
So his mum's gone. Loomis has abandoned him and rejected him. So you've got this big, hulking brute. They really lay on the he's massive with a trowel here. They've got to cast a really big, whopping, I think he's an ex-wrestler, the actor, who's, forgive me, his name escapes me. And he's got long, matted hair. He's got masks all over the walls because that's his only pastime, is creating these sort of papier-mâché kind of scruffy masks. To me, all that establishing backstory made him seem a bigger deal, a more terrifying prospect than just... One of the problems with the first film is it is telling you, the viewer, in words, usually coming out of Donald Pleasance's mouth, that Michael Myers is really scary and he's really evil and you should be terrified of him. Whereas this film gives you a reason to be terrified of him.
Yeah.
So I quite liked it.
One thing I will say, though, is by humanising him and then having him basically become impervious to all pain, which is especially prevalent in the second film, Rob Zombie film, which kind of makes it a bit silly then, like how is he surviving all that? Because we know he's just a normal kid who grew up to be, admittedly, a big old bastard, but yeah, that's kind of my only problem. I also thought at times it was a little bit generic. And I thought the end sequence was quite drawn out because basically this is a remake of the original. So again, he's going after Laurie Strode, who we know is his sister. She was a little baby he let live. And it looks actually like he's not actually trying to kill her, but she doesn't know who he is.
So let's cover that.
She doesn't find that out until the sequel.
But we know we suspect it. So Tyler Mane is the actor who plays the hulking Michael Myers in this movie, who returns to the family home and finds the deteriorated, worn mask buried beneath the floorboards, and that's why he puts it back on. Laurie Strode is played by Scout Taylor Compton, who I think does a good job. I
thought she was good, yeah.
And you're right, the finale of this movie sees Myers not trying to kill her, but almost trying to just be with her, just get her to come and live with. It's almost like he wants them to live together in the husk of the old house, which is quite sad. Yeah. She obviously horrified, escapes.
Killed loads of them,
killed by this point all of her friends, and I think it ends up that they fall from a balcony together. She ends up with a gun and shoots him in the face. Yeah. And that is the end of the movie, with Laurie Strode covered in the spray of a brother's blood, screaming.
And then this is where they maybe ruin it a bit, because then there's a sequel a couple of years later, which again follows on pretty much directly from those events, at least initially it does. Michael Myers ain't dead.
Yeah, he's been literally shot at point blank range in the face. Yeah. And I agree with you, your point about if you're going to try and make a film feel more realistic somehow and grounded in reality, don't then give us a man who can withstand
getting shot in the face at point blank range.
And I suppose in some ways that my sympathy there would be perhaps he didn't think he was going to make a sequel, so he wanted to give his one-off standalone film a sense of finality.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I just think by doing all that, making him more human, they kind of they make a rod for their own back, really, don't they?
There's quite a clever nod to the old Halloween 2, which of course this one replaces. It opens with her being stalked and pursued by Myers in the hospital, only for her to wake up. It kills a nurse, brutally kills a nurse, because one thing you can rely on Rob Zombie is absolutely sickening amounts of gore.
Yeah. I liked that actually, the sort of nod to the...
And then she wakes up and it's a dream, and she's actually just going through a kind of PTSD experience.
And it's, which you would.
Survived that night.
And so, what is it, a year later?
I think it's a year later.
He's been
later.
He's been living... Oh, yeah. So this one, there's a really weird... And I quite like this about... I liked Halloween 2. I don't know. What did you think of it?
You mean this
Rob
Halloween
Zombie 2, yeah.
So I like that, having talked about how Halloween H2O reduced him to a kind of pathetic, not particularly scary antagonist at all. This movie makes him horrifying. He's big. He's, scruffy, hairy recluse. He's got this tattered shreds of the mask clinging to his face, the half that's not been shot off. He's eating like dead dogs raw to survive. He's killing farmhands in a field, seemingly just for a laugh.
And his motive in this film is that he sees the ghost of his dead mum, Rob Zombie's wife, because you can guarantee she's going to be in there somewhere. And those ghostly scenes are quite creepy. And there's one bit when she's like guiding him into this barn, which is where he kind of recuperates. And just the shot of it in this dark field with her wearing all white, walking into the barn, I think it's quite chilling. And then there's another bit later on where there's this like dinner party. It's really sort of avant-garde almost. A bit,
It could come across as a bit silly,
yes,
but at least they're trying to do something different and interesting.
And it broke it up, yeah, because we've said before, the middle bits of these films sometimes do feel a bit samey and they drag a little bit. Well, at least in this one, you had those kind of ghostly elements. Yeah, so I thought it was okay. The only bad thing is they had to use a different kid because Michael Myers is kind of seeing a vision of his kid self and his dead mum.
And they couldn't cast the same boy because he was too old.
And he wants to get Laurie Killer to come back so they could all be together as a family. Yeah.
And so in a weird way, even though he's such a brutal, horrible murderer, because he's coming from this, kind of simpleton sort of, he's like a little boy in a giant man's body, you almost feel a bit sorry for him. It is just a really sad kind of... That's one thing with Rob Zombie's these two films and all his films. They're always so grim and bleak and miserable. There's not a shred of light or joy to be had. Happily, they do bring back Malcolm McDowell, though. So even though he got smashed in at the end of the first film...
There is some joy to be had because he is... So in this film, he is basically an egomaniac. Like, he basically cashes in on his experiences with Myers, writes this book, and is become like an actual arsehole, like a real diva. It's like he's making demands.
And he talks about his old self as like, oh, that's the old me. Yeah. So it's almost like he's decided that being Mr. Nice Guy, all that gets you is your head crushed in by Michael Myers, which is looking to survive. So he's just a big-headed...
Big twat.
There's a bit when he's appearing on a TV chat show and Weird Al Yankovic is on it with him. Yeah. And he goes, hello, Mr. Weird. Because he's never heard of him and thinks that's his name. He's absolutely brilliant.
And that bit was really funny, actually. And he walks out of the talk show shouting like, I've never been so insulted. Like he's really angry at his agent.
He bullies his agent all the way through the film.
Great. It's really
worth watching just for him, basically.
And then the very ending, he does kind of do the right thing, kind of sacrifices himself to save Laurie.
Because by this point... Myers has got her swiped her from a Halloween party, taken her to the barn that he's living in, and he's going to do, kill her.
So they can all be a family. But she's also having visions of... She's been held down by young Michael, who Malcolm McDowell points out, there's nobody there. So that's kind of a...
She starts to experience the same delusion.
Yeah.
And we've seen this with we talked about in the earlier movies with little Jamie sort of inheriting the curse. This film closes with Laurie Strode seemingly having been institutionalised, and has she now become the vessel?
She walks out of the barn having finally killed Myers, wearing his mask, and then the very end, she's in an institution, all white walls, and she sees her mother. I think it was quite good. I liked the Rob Zombie films.
I mean, we'll come to our ranking in a little while, but I agree with you that I think both of them. I think the first one.
They're not brilliant.
I think the first one is good, and I think the second one has its moments. Would be my view.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So that leaves one more movie in this epic saga. We've already blasted our attempt to cram these into 1 hour to smithereens. I'll see how much of this I can hack away in the editing process, in the cutting room. Leaves us with 2018's Halloween, confusingly titled because it's a sequel to the original 1978 movie Halloween, which does get it off on a bad footing for me because it annoys me.
If you have to explain...
If they're trying to say that...
So it's not a reboot, it's a sequel to the original Halloween, but it's also got the same
name
title,
as it.
is it? So what is it then?
It's really confusing.
Yeah.
So
that annoyed me, actually.
For clarity, it is a retcon, once again,
another one.
Every Halloween movie except for the first one. And what this means is that Halloween, we're going to call it Halloween 2018, does not have Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, as Michael Myers' sister. She's just
a survivor.
A survivor. Yeah. That's it. And they managed to get Jamie Lee Curtis to appear in this film, who's now in her 60s. So it's 40 years after the first one. Yeah. And she does a great job as this sort of troubled, scarred, tough woman, basically, who for 40 years has had to live with the trauma of what she experienced on that night in Halloween, to the point where it's soured her relationship with her own daughter because she's had to raise her. She's tried to raise her to be
resilient,
resilient and paranoid, and expecting at any moment that something Michael Myers could appear to kill her. Again, parallels with Terminator 2 in Linda Hamilton's character, where she's John Connor
like that,
to be a warrior, and he doesn't like it and rejects it. So her daughter has then got a daughter of her own. So we've got 3 generations of Strodes, or whatever the surname is. I'm not sure how that works. And the granddaughter, she's quite sympathetic to the troubled character of Laurie, her grandmother, whereas her mum, so Laurie's daughter, is pretty, the relationship's pretty broken.
So it's kind of, I thought, got some parallels to Halloween H2O, except it's infinitely better.
Yeah, except it's not shit.
Because this, obviously, that was 20 years later, Jamie Lee Curtis's character having survived, and she fights back like she does in this one. Yet they made such a better job.
Oh man, so it's like they've waited every 20 years. There's now a tradition. We get a new Halloween movie, but this one happens
Pennywise every 27 years or whatever.
Although Myers will be like 80 odd, won't he? In the next one.
Well, he was quite old in this one though, wasn't he?
I like that though.
You saw a lot of him without his mask at the beginning,
sort of blurred
just slight glimpses of it. Yeah, that was one thing I didn't like about it, actually. I'd have liked for him to have not killed anyone until he got his mask back. Because he gets it back from the podcasters.
Yes.
Yeah. He kills them first and then gets it. I would have liked him to have gotten it out of their trunk first and then...
Because this film asks us to believe that he's done nothing for 40 years.
Yeah.
So since his original killing spree, he's basically just been incarcerated for 40 years. He's got a new doctor, a new Loomis, in effect. In fact, Jamie Lee Curtis' character, Laurie Strode, even refers to him as, "Oh, you're the new Loomis." When they meet Dr. Sartain, he's called.
Nice little twist with the doctor as well.
Oh, well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. But it opens with he's incarcerated, mute, hasn't said or done anything for 40 years. The doctor is being consulted by a pair of podcasters, as you say,
right,
and they're there to make a podcast about the crimes of Michael Myers.
True crime podcast. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's quite a good idea, actually. Yeah. We should think about doing one. And then, flash forward a bit, but in effect, while they're out and about on their investigative trail, Myers has yet again been transferred.
Well, this annoyed me. Why transfer him the day before Halloween?
Yeah.
Like the anniversary of his killings. Wait and like a week after.
Just give it till bonfire night and then move him.
They've got to transfer him then at that exact time.
Yeah, it all goes horribly
with a bus full of dangerous, psychotic inmates.
Yeah.
Like, again, just transfer one at a time, because if something goes wrong, as it does, you're going to have loads of them.
And put more than one police officer on board, and maybe a competent doctor as well, although they don't seem to exist in the world of Halloween. No. So we end up with Myers is on the loose. As you rightly said, he is maskless, and some of the glimpses we get show that he's scarred in one of his eyes, which is clearly where Laurie Strode jabbed him with a coat hanger in the first film. So that's a good little bit of continuity.
Yeah.
And then there's a few weird coincidences in this film. Plot-wise, he just sort of happens to stumble into the same gas station that the podcasters happen to be at, and then kills all the staff.
That's true, yeah.
Kills the podcasters quite horribly.
Yeah.
There's that bit where he drops a load of teeth over the cubicle that she's sitting in.
Yeah, that was good.
It's great.
kills in this film are on another level,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Best in the series by a mile.
I agree.
Like, brutal without being gratuitous or silly.
Yes.
And sort of creative without being over the top. Just unpleasant.
Yeah, they're not cartoonish like they were in, some of the
other sequels.
H2O, that kind of era.
I would say this was the scariest Myers has ever been. Arguably even in the original. But I will come to that. I guess the crux of where we're heading with this is, I think we both enjoyed the new Halloween.
I really enjoyed it, yeah.
I think definitely the best since the original.
I think easily the best sequel /
spin-off, reboot, remake. So maybe we'll spare judgment then. We'll come to that when we attempt the rankings shortly. But
because, we are going to rank them.
We're going to attempt to jointly see if we can agree on it. What if we violently disagree? What will happen then? We'll have to have a really aggressive game of rock, paper, scissors.
We'll be like those podcasters and end up dead.
Yeah, both, without Myers' involvement. Yeah, maybe they'll just come round and tell us to shut up, smash our heads in. So he gets his mask back after beating the podcasters to a pulp and whatnot. And as you say, it slightly devalues the moment when he gets it back because he's already...
I would have liked him to have got it back and then killed them.
Yeah. Like maybe they give it to him to try and trigger a reaction, which is why they showed it to him in the opening scene. I suppose you could argue that maybe showing it to him in the opening scene was what triggered him, but...
Maybe. It's not it's not a big criticism. It's just perhaps what I would have done if I was suddenly a hotshot film director.
And then if we're kind of picking holes, I guess, again, to skate over the movie, as you might expect, his 40 years later killing spree Mark II brings him inevitably into conflict with the aging, suffering, PTSD Laurie Strode, who's been preparing, it would seem, for that encounter almost all her life. But he just sort of randomly bumps into her. I'm not even convinced.
She, in fairness, she actually goes after him. She hears on the police radio. First of all, she sees the news reports that, he's escaped and lots of others have escaped from being transported. And then I believe she hears it on the police radio. She's got a police radio and she hears about these killings going on. So she actually goes after him and wounds him at the same time as the police go into the house with the inevitable babysitter killing.
Yeah.
So I feel like that bit you can kind of explain, but then he does randomly run into her granddaughter.
Completely at random,
which is
bumps off a couple of her annoying friends and then targets her, and it is a little bit too coincidental for me, but I don't mind.
I mean,
it was a hoot.
It didn't bother me too much. I didn't think it was really silly and coincidental. It was coincidental, but then I feel like they explained it well. She was at her high school dance and was making her way home because she was angry with her ex-boyfriend.
And if there's one thing Myers loves, it's a high school dance.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like it didn't bother me too much.
The other
side of it,
daft bit, but again that I enjoyed, and I think you did too, was the doctor's twist.
Yes,
where Myers is run over by a zealous old police officer who says that he was there on the first night 40 years ago. Yeah. I had a look at whether the actor was the same actor, but it wasn't. No. That would have been cool. So you've got Dr. Sartain, this police officer, and Laurie Strode's granddaughter, who they were taking to safety at the time when they saw Myers, and he deliberately just drives into him to incapacitate him. Myers is smashed to bits on the floor. The doctor gets out of the car to go and attend to his patient. The police officer is remonstrating with him, telling him to move so he can shoot Myers and finish the job. Whereupon Dr. Sartain produces a scalpel, which is an odd thing for a psychotherapist to carry around, and plunges it into the copper's neck, killing him to protect Myers because he's so determined to find out what the workings of his mind.
Especially, he wants to see Myers kill so as he can truly understand him. And I believe, doesn't he even put his mask on?
Yeah, he's somehow, even though he's an old bloke who by this point has got one arm in a sling, he manages to lift Myers, the huge hulking mass, pull him all the way back into the back seat of the car, chuck him in the car and just puts his mask on for a bit just to see what it feels like. So at this point, Laurie Strode's granddaughter is quite distressed.
Yes,
as you might expect,
understandably.
In the backseat.
Eventually, she gets reunited with her family at Laurie Strode's sort of safe house, which they've pimped out with all this, like a hidden room and just shitload of guns and traps.
I like the idea that if they've been on like cribs, they're like, yeah, check this out. I've got spike walls and flamethrowers. And so the way she gets out is that Myers in the back of the car wakes up, pops the mask back on, smashes the doctor to bits with just crushes him against the front of the car. And she does a runner. So doctor's dead, cop's dead, Myers is back on the loose again, granddaughter runs off through the woods, eventually gets back to the house. You were quite right. And
so then you get the showdown that we've all been waiting for. One thing that really annoyed me about this, she's waited all this 40 years to confront him, mega paranoid, really careful, and then he's outside and she's leaning against the door, whereupon he just puts his arms through and starts strangling her. It's like, I just don't think she would do that.
Like, wouldn't she have like a sniper rifle and just be sat upstairs?
Just
like,
shooting at him, but...
People tend to play into his hands, don't they? They seem to play to his strengths.
But not Laurie, come on. She's better than that. But that was, again, a minor gripe. And, eventually she traps him in the basement.
It's all three generations to get one over on him. So she traps him in the basement that she's rigged up. Her daughter tricks him into believing that she's pathetic and she can't bring herself to shoot him, and then shoots him. And even the granddaughter gets in on the action, stabs him in the neck with a carving knife.
To send him back down into the basement, whereupon they trigger this trap and then just set the entire house on fire.
What I liked about this ending was so it's really important that we get strong female leads particularly in this kind of post-Me Too era. So we're looking for strong women. It's great to see Jamie Lee Curtis at the forefront of that, even though she's in her 60s. That's ace. And, soon we'll be off to see Terminator Dark Fate with another, not young leading lady, which is great, and Linda Hamilton. But what I didn't want was to see Michael Myers be completely emasculated and beaten up, easily overcome by this family. I still wanted him to be a powerful, scary villain. And I think he was right till the end. Yeah, right. I think they managed to preserve his mystique as opposed to H2O and Resurrection, where he just looked like a bumbling idiot.
And then at the end, you see him looking up whilst the flames kind of surround him. Then you see again, there's no sign of him. You hear breathing at the very end of the credits to suggest that he's alive. And the fact that they've signed to make 2 more films suggests that he is. That kind of disappointed me a little bit, the fact that they're going to make more sequels.
Because to me, this felt finally like we'd had a good bit of closure.
A good film for once, because there was a lot of shit in there.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I think I've been quite charitable to a lot of the sequels in this episode, but if you compare Halloween 2018 to pretty much any of the other sequels, I think I'd say, and even the Rob Zombie remakes, I think it's superior to, is my view. Definitely. So check it out. Would be our recommendation, I think. And so, rankings. Let's straight to the crux. I think that if you are young and you've never seen the original Halloweens, it came out in 1978, it's older than even me and you, that must be well old. When you watch it back now, it's obviously got huge cultural significance, it's a hugely important piece of cinema, it's a very well-crafted, tight, suspenseful horror movie, but it is dead dated when you watch it, in my opinion.
I don't know if I agree with that.
You think still holds up? I think
we're going to disagree with the ranking number 1, because I still think it holds up. I think it's still, like I said, very suspenseful. It's tense. It's quite scary. Yet it's not as gory and it's not as tightly made as some of the latter ones. But I still think it's really good. Great soundtrack. It introduces the villain.
Yeah, and you can't knock the innovation.
Great performances.
Correct. Great characters, great villain, great theme tune.
And I guess ultimately you wouldn't have any of the sequels.
Or arguably the slasher genre.
Yeah, without the original Halloween. So have
we got our top 2 then?
I think so.
Or do you think there's any other sequel?
Okay, so what are you saying is number 1?
So I personally think there's an argument to put Halloween 2018 at the top,
and I
on the basis that it is a better overall movie if you watch it cold without acknowledging any of the cultural significance and importance of the original. Just as a piece of cinema, I think it's more engaging, gripping, and compelling.
I would still personally put the original Halloween over it. Because, as I say, just for the significance of it, but I would definitely put, for me, they're 1 and 2.
Yeah,
I think you could
argue the case either way.
Good case.
So maybe we'll leave that up to the listeners. If you're looking for a Halloween movie to watch, you can decide. You either watch the dead old classic or the brand new, sparkling, surprisingly impressive reboot.
Or, watch them both.
Yeah, it's a great idea, because it's a sequel. Brilliant.
A sequel. What's the worst one?
So and then let's go bottom up, shall we? So the worst one, in my opinion, is H2O. I actually hated that even more than Resurrection, despite Busta Rhymes beating up Michael Myers, which is an unforgivable crime.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Are we saying they're the worst two?
I think so, yeah, definitely.
Is it then Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, which you hated?
Hate.
I got a distinct sense of hatred from you. When
I think it had good ideas, but
it was just flawed.
It was badly made. I mean, there was trouble. So I probably would go for that.
So maybe that's third from bottom.
Bottom, yeah.
So then
it's tricky, isn't it?
I'm going to say that I then found Halloween 2 less entertaining than 4 and 5. So I'm going to try and argue Halloween 2 into the 4th from bottom spot.
I'll give you that.
Then I think it's 4 and 5 in either order we'll come back to. Then I think you're into Halloween 3 and then the Rob Zombie remakes territory. What do you think?
I would agree with that.
I think, much as Halloween 3 is well worth a watch because just of how bonkers, out of place, mad, daft it is, it isn't a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. It's massively flawed and more funny than scary.
Yeah. Which is probably why it's not quite up there.
So let me propose a rundown, right?
Yeah.
Bottom of the pile, Halloween H2O.
Agreed.
Turn Michael Myers into a silly, weakling, Scream-esque parody of himself. Halloween Resurrection next. Same rubbish Myers, even more rubbishly getting battered by Busta Rhymes. But the actual premise of the film being a reality TV show is vaguely entertaining.
Yeah.
Then you've got Halloween 6, just knackered, botched together, troubled production, silly ideas.
Shame. I think it could have been a lot better, that one. Had potential, but yeah.
Then we've got...
I thought we said Halloween 2.
Oh, sorry. Yes, then we've got Halloween 2.
Yeah.
Just really boring
just
sequel.
A bit run-of-the-mill,
just
wasn't it? Yeah.
really dated and dull. Then Halloween 5. Then 4.
I would agree with that. I think 4, because I actually quite liked the ending of 4. I know you weren't as keen. And then 5, they just made it so, like, she didn't actually kill the mum.
Yeah.
She had all these, like, I just thought, it was a bit wishy-washy. Whilst at least 4 kind of stuck to its guns a bit. I think it was a solid...
And it was the return of Michael Myers after Halloween 3's...
So I think it was a solid, if not...
entry.
Yeah.
Then I think we're saying Halloween 3, just well worth a watch.
Just because of our entertainment.
Just a complete anomaly. Then Rob Zombie's sequel. Because it's not perfect, but...
The first one was better because I thought the young Michael Myers stuff, we hadn't really seen it before, and he was really good in that role.
Correct.
The second one went off a bit with...
he was...
And it's nice ideas, but...
It's the same problem the new ones will have when they spawn their sequels that you talked about. I think Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends are due out in the next couple of years. It's once you've done a pretty effective reboot, how do you then follow that up?
Without making it cartoonish.
Correct. Especially if you're going to be surviving yet another explosion in a basement. Yeah. And so Rob Zombie, his original remake is therefore coming in at third place, yeah. Worth a watch, if only for Malcolm McDowell. Michael! Love it.
Yeah, I like that.
Followed by, I will back down on my renegade push. I will have Halloween 2018 at number 2, and the original and best John Carpenter's classic as the number 1 best Halloween movie of all time.
I do agree with what you're saying, though. If you were just to watch it, standalone film, maybe it is a better, but I don't know. You wouldn't have it without the original. And the original, I still think holds up.
It'd be interesting to get if you had like a young relative you wanted to traumatise, like show them both and see which one they found scarier.
Yeah,
but that's probably quite irresponsible, isn't it? Because they're both 18 certificates. But we can't possibly condone that.
So yeah, there you go. I think we cracked it.
And does Halloween, the Halloween franchise, despite some of the rocky road through that 11 movie marathon session that we've put in over the last few weeks, does it make it into the illustrious hallowed halls of the Hall of Pain? Muted, like a muted chuckle. Because we're so knackered.
Does it? I'd say, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. It's a worthy entrant. Michael Myers can shuffle slowly, very slowly, into his little booth where he'll rest forevermore.
Well done, Michael.
Well done, Michael. Right, well, that's it. This is that awkward bit where I can never say bye very effectively. Do you want it, maybe if you just knock me out or something? Just put me out of my misery.
Oh, Michael.
See you next time.
You couldn't stop.
I blew it.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock.
Hey kids, I hope y'all enjoyed our Halloween special. If you did, please leave us a 5-star rating, or even send some feedback our way to darknatterpodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter @dark_natter, or on Instagram @darknatterpodcast. You can also check out our YouTube channel by searching for, you guessed it, Dark Natter. I'm also excited to announce that to add to the Halloween festivities, my new short horror story collection, John Richter's Disturbing Works, Volume 2, is released today. So please head over to Amazon and impulse buy a copy without thinking too hard about it. If you like creepy stories with horrible twists, it'll be right up your street. Finally, the only thing left to say is to thank you for listening, and ask you to tune in next time when we'll be back to our regular fortnightly schedule discussing the Terminator franchise. See you soon.